On August 8, 1963, a calculated true crime plot was underway in the English countryside during the dead of night. A notorious heist was about to take place aboard the Royal Mail train, which was carrying a lot of cash and was traveling quickly from Glasgow to London. In the quiet countryside of Buckinghamshire, a group of daring robbers accomplished the unthinkable. They took a whopping $261 million from a moving train. The Great Train Robbery is the tale of how $261 million, which is now worth an astounding $69 million or $85.6 million, vanished into thin air. Fasten your seatbelts, because this isn't your average heist. It's a thrilling story of trickery, bravery, and mystery. Who was the criminal mastermind behind the legendary Great Train Robbery, and what was the cleverly plotted plan that enabled the thieves to derail the system and escape with the loot? Bruce Reynolds, notorious burglar known for his cunning plans, was the brains behind the biggest theft in British history. Reynolds began with small-scale thefts, which led to him being in and out of jail. He received a 3-year sentence for breaking and entering in 1952. In 1957, authorities sentenced him to an additional 3.5 years for robbing a bookmaker. After his release from prison in 1960, he tried his hand at trading antiques, but couldn't give up his illegal activities. He joined a gang and took up the nickname Napoleon. They carried out a $62,000 theft at Heathrow Airport and attempted a minor rail robbery in 1962. However, Reynolds had bigger plans in mind, including the fabled Great Train Robbery. Let's explore the complex plan in detail to discover how they covered every possibility and completed this theft flawlessly. Following his release from prison in 1962, Reynolds started to put together his team. He started with the Southwest Gang, his own men. He appointed a gang member, Gordon Goody, a hairdresser in London and part-time burglar, as his right-hand man. It became evident as the specifics were ironed out that the Southwest Gang would not be large enough to carry off a robbery of this magnitude. However, it was decided that the two gangs would work together. Reynolds and Goody were close friends with Buster Edwards, the boss of the Southeast Gang, and a former boxer who now owned a club. For the audacious 1963 Great Train Robbery, Reynolds put together a team of 15 men, a move he subsequently referred to as his Sistine Chapel ceiling. Reynolds used his connections to obtain all vital information regarding the train. This included the schedules, the amount of cash it would be carrying, the number of staff on board, and the car it would be traveling in. Reynolds learned that there had been a bank holiday, leading to an accumulation of mail and envelopes stuffed with cash. The men realized that the robbery would be extremely profitable if they could pull it off. He used an insider, later referred to in the media as the Ulsterman, to find out which day the train would be transporting cash to London. 2 key informants provided them with vital information, including train timetables and cargo details. The other provided a covert location at Buckinghamshire's Leatherslade Farm. The date and time were decided. Reynolds had to work out one more thing before proceeding: how to stop the train. He already had his troops, the train's details, and a date. It was Roger Corddry, an associate of Buster Edwards, who provided the solution. Trains use signals to determine when to move forward and when to stop, just like cars do. Green indicates go, amber indicates slow down, and red indicates stop. Corddry suggested that he fix the signals. At their designated location, he would conceal the green signals with leather gloves and black paper, and he would activate a red signal with wire and batteries. They had set everything up. Now they just needed to wait for their turn. At their safe haven, Leatherslade Farm, the men kept a low profile while they played Monopoly and drank beer, waiting for the day the train was scheduled to pass. To make things easier, they disconnected the phone lines at the emergency call box next to the tracks. There was nothing special about the train from Glasgow. Known as the Up Special, it was a mobile post office consisting of 12 cars driven by a single diesel locomotive. It was transporting postal employees who handled mail and parcels while traveling to London just as it had done every night for 125 years without an incident. It was completely normal until the night of August 8, 1963. On that fateful day, at 3 a.m, a British postal train traveling from Glasgow to London had to slow down at a red light close to Cheddington. David Whitby, the train's co-engineer, leaped off the lead car to look into the signal that was causing the delay. As he approached, he saw that an old leather glove was covering the signal light. Additionally, a 6-volt battery was suspended from the device. Someone used a hand lantern and batteries to modify the signal. When Whitby tried to call the rail line to find out what was wrong, he discovered that the phone lines had been disconnected. Confused by what he was witnessing, Whitby started heading back to the train, but someone immediately stopped him by clamping a hand down on his arm. A voice growled, "I will kill you if you shout." Then a number of masked men appeared out of the shadows and accompanied Whitby back to the lead car, where Jack Mills, the head engineer, was waiting, unaware of the danger. "Don't make a sound, or you'll regret it," the bandits threatened as they shackled Whitby and Mills together. The men in masks dashed into the car and started beating Mills over the head until he lost consciousness, and with that, the Great Train Robbery was underway. How did just 15 men in under 30 minutes pull off the most lucrative robbery in history? The men took over the lead car and then separated the first 2 cars of the 12-car train. That's when they encountered a problem. The robber who was supposed to drive the train quickly realized that it was far more complicated than he had thought. He discovered that the postal locomotive was far more intricate. They required Mill. Acknowledging this problem, the men awakened Mills from a semi-conscious state and made him operate the train for a quarter of a mile while he was bleeding. More guys in masks stood by at Bridego Bridge in Ledburn, waiting for the train to arrive. More men came out of the shadows, and the only barrier separating them and the money was a locked door, which they broke through with iron tools. After taking control of the employees within, they swiftly formed into a human chain and began moving money bags from the train to their cars. The men had to load up 120 sacks of cash out of the train and into 3 different cars, 2 Range Rovers and a military truck. In less than 30 minutes after stopping the train, the 15 robbers disappeared with an astounding $2.61 million. After that, they drove to their farm hideout. They divided the wealth among themselves there. The remaining 75 postal workers in the cars were unaware of what was going on. Later, a security officer circling the remaining 10 cars in Cheddington became aware of the seriousness of the situation and alerted the police. Before contacting Scotland Yard, the police searched homes and farms throughout the day. The FBI sent its special flying squad to conduct an investigation after searching through a sizable criminal index. Carloads of detectives were reportedly searching the streets, concentrating on people that informants had named and the girlfriends of well-known criminals. The New York Times referred to the crime as British Western and compared it to the audacity of the Dalton brothers and Jesse James gangs. The Great Train Robbery appeared to be a crime that would be extremely difficult for Scotland Yard investigators to solve. The men had been wearing masks, and there weren't many witnesses. However, one clue suggested the robbers' potential location. A masked man urged the postal workers in the second car not to call the police until half an hour after they departed the train, according to the British Transport Police. This led authorities to believe that the robbers most likely had a nearby hiding location. This was no simple game of cat and mouse. The hunt was on. A desperate gang of thieves on the run. Will they manage to avoid detection and disappear, or will law enforcement track them out and prosecute them? Authorities started searching surrounding areas, retrieving criminal records and staking out a few suspicious homes as soon as the Great Train Robbery happened. But it didn't appear to lead anywhere. The first thing the authorities did was analyze the crime scene. Because of eyewitness testimony, authorities were sure that whoever plotted this crime had insider knowledge of the mailing industry. The men were aware of the train's arrival time, the location of the cash sacks within the car, the railroad's lack of protection, and when to stop the train. As investigators worked on this theory, an important lead emerged. 8 days after it started its investigation, the flying squad had its first breakthrough in the case. A herdsman who lived roughly 20 miles from the scene called the police days after the crime after becoming suspicious of the nearby Leather Slade farm. Following the robbery, he had observed men entering and leaving the house at strange hours. The following day, when police investigated this tip, they discovered a wealth of information in the farmhouse. The robbers' scheme was derailed when the farmhouse was to be set on fire by 6 robbers. They performed the task so poorly that the police discovered fingerprints all over the place. The getaway automobiles from the crime were parked in the yard. This was the same one that the men used as their secret hideout. Authorities discovered 20 empty mailbags on the ground even before they entered the house. They also discovered games, food supplies, and sleeping bags inside the house. Additionally, cops recovered multiple fingerprints from a ketchup bottle and a Monopoly game when the robbers tried to remove them from the house. Authorities used this new information to gradually capture each thief one by one. What different destinies awaited them, from near escapes to life sentences? Roger Corddry, a Bournemouth florist, was the first thief police caught during the Great Train Robbery. After he had paid a rent 3 months ahead of time, his landlady informed the police. Following Corddry's arrest, authorities apprehended 12 additional robbers, including Gordon Goody, Charlie Wilson, Roy James, John Daly, Brian Field, Leonard Field, John Wheater, Ronnie Biggs, Tommy Wisby, Jim Hussey, William Bowl, and Bob Welch. By using information about his colleagues, they appeared before Justice Edmund Davies at the Buckinghamshire Assizes on January 20th, 1964. The men faced trial for the Great Train Robbery in 1964. All but 5 received 30-year prison sentences. All of them pleaded not guilty, except for Roger Corddry. He admitted his wrongdoing and gave back his portion of the money, $80,000. In March 1964, during the defense hearings, authorities charged John Daly after discovering his fingerprints on the Monopoly game. He was later declared not guilty. His attorney argued in a petition that the game might have had fingerprints on it before it was brought to the farm. The Thames Valley Police Museum has the famous Monopoly game on exhibit. Charles Wilson and Ronnie Biggs both managed to escape from prison as a result of their severe sentences. In Wilson's case, his friends assisted him in escaping to Canada, where he remained until he was tracked down and deported back to England. In 1965, Ronnie Biggs jumped into a furniture truck from a wall to escape from prison. First he fled to Australia, then to Brazil, then to France. He managed to evade authorities until 2001. When his health deteriorated and he knew he'd be caught, he still came back to England for medical treatment, which ultimately landed him back in prison. A few of the robbers met violent ends, ultimately paying the price for their crime. According to reports, Buster Edwards committed suicide in the 1990s. A hitman shot Charles Wilson dead in Spain, while a car accident took the lives of Brian Field and his family. The identities of other gang members, including the Postal Service informant, are still unknown to the authorities. Jack Mills and David Whitby, the victims, also suffered long-lasting effects from the theft. Mills never entirely healed from his wounds and continued to have headaches until his death in 1970. The incidents traumatized David Whitby, who passed away at the age of 34 in 1972 from a heart attack. It took the police 5 years after the crime to apprehend the operation's mastermind. The police arrested Bruce Reynolds, and a judge sentenced him to 10 years in prison. Reynolds contacted underworld leader Joey Pyle after the heist, and Pyle assisted him in locating multiple hiding places. He adopted the name Keith Clement Miller and was joined by his spouse, Frances, who changed her name to Angela, and their son, Nick. Before relocating to Torquay, Devon, the family went back to London. Under the new name Keith Clement Miller, Reynolds moved back to the town where he had his childhood vacation. He made a mistake in his haste to catch up with old friends in London. On November 9, 1968, in Torquay, the Metropolitan Police identified Hiller as Reynolds and took him into custody. Reynolds admitted his guilt and received a 25-year sentence. At HMP Durham, the authorities housed all the Great Train robbers in a high-security section. While incarcerated, Reynolds made friends with notorious figures Charlie and Eddie Richardson. In 1978, he was freed from HMP Maidstone. What distinguished the Great Train Robbery from other audacious thefts and cemented its permanent place in the annals of criminal history? Without firing a single shot, the gang executed the century's biggest theft. They moved the valuable cargo of high-value banknotes to their waiting escape vehicles with precise accuracy, using intimidation instead of violence. The Great Train Robbery took place in an astonishingly short 30 minutes, with military-level efficiency. It was even larger than the fabled gold bullion theft between London and Paris in 1855, making it the largest train heist in British history. If you enjoyed the video and would like to see more thrilling stories like this one, don't forget to press the subscribe button and give us a thumbs up.